Many people think that the Shroud of Turin is the blood-stained burial linen that Jesus of Nazareth was wrapped in following his crucifixion. However, detractors claim it is a fake, or at most, just a historically significant religious artifact. What can we learn from current research? A pale sheet of woven linen measuring around 14 feet, 4.5 meters in length, the Shroud of Turin would be inconspicuous if not for the characteristic reddish-brown markings on its front and back. The fabric depicts a prone man with his hands folded. The front and rear views of the guy's head perfectly meet in the center, indicating that the man's body was covered in a nude state when he passed away. The pictures on the fabric display a plethora of horrifying bodily traumas, including gouges, welts, piercings, and cuts. For supporters, these pictures provide compelling proof of Jesus' crucifixion and the biblical account of his death. However, history and science imply that there is more to the tale. The shroud can be dated to the late 1300s based on historical records. Its existence before 1390 is up for discussion among scholars, who characterize the time frame prior to that as very murky territory. There was dispute regarding the cloth's authenticity, even in the Middle Ages. At the time, church officials wrote allegations implying the cloth was a fake. Historians, however, point out that there may have been more than one of these shrouds circulating at the time, and that the cloth currently housed in Turin, Italy, may not have been the subject of any fake allegations. That shroud's existence dates back to the 15th century. It was damaged in a fire and given to the House of Savoy in Italy in 1453. The artifact has undergone numerous patches and repairs throughout time. Although it was filmed in a chapel in the 17th century, it wasn't until 2 centuries later that it was shown to the public and taken in its first photos. These pictures were what turned the fabric from artifact to sensation. The pictures weren't very noteworthy on their own until you looked at the reverse negative, which revealed a close-up of a bearded, injured man. Previously, it was thought that the stains and images on the linen had been painted there at some point in the past by an artist. However, the finding of the intricate body image embedded in the fabric completely changed the theories and persuaded many that the images had been created by direct contact with a real human corpse. Some Christians think that once Jesus was raised from the dead, divine light or energy was released, transferring the picture from his body onto the fabric. The cloth would be dated to 30 AD, the biblical period of Jesus' death, if this was, in fact, the death shroud that covered the body of the real Jesus of Nazareth. This dating, however, conflicts with both the artifact's contemporary scientific study and later historical records. Since scientists were initially permitted to view the shroud in 1969, a range of studies have been conducted on it, including physical inspections, chemical investigations, and radiocarbon dating. Following preliminary investigations, an 11-member Turin Commission, including advisors and scientists, was established, and the Shroud of Turin Research Project, STURP, was established in 1977. Their results, which were the result of multiple tests, were published in 1981 and read, "We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of a real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. The bloodstains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum albumin. The image is an ongoing mystery, and until further chemical studies are made, perhaps by this group of scientists, or perhaps by some scientists in the future, the problem remains unsolved." The absence of synthetic pigments indicated that the image was created using a real human body, but the researchers did not provide an explanation for how this may have happened. The shroud material was found to date to 1260–1390 AD via radiocarbon-14 dating of the cloth. This shocking discovery contradicts the dates of Jesus' death. However, detractors claimed that the examined fabric samples were from patches that were made more recently than the original fabric. Additionally, in 1998, Anastasio Alberto Balestrero, the former Cardinal Archbishop of Turin, said in a statement that the radiocarbon dating had been manipulated in a overseas Masonic plot. 2015 saw the discovery by Italian researchers that the mysterious shroud may have been produced in India and includes DNA from all around the world, adding to the plethora of bizarre discoveries regarding the cloth. The origins of people and the kinds of surroundings that the shroud has come into touch with have been identified by DNA analysis of dust and pollen on the shroud. It suggests that the fabric would have been made in India and then traveled around the globe before arriving in Italy during the Middle Ages, raising questions about its possible Middle European origin. Plant species identified using DNA sequencing included chicory, ryegrass, horsetail, and clovers, all of which suggested their origins in Asia, the Middle East, or the Americas. Stains suggest that the deceased man had wounds and blood on him. It is claimed that the images on the fabric depict a body with cuts to almost every surface, including gouges, punctures, and longitudinal incisions. On one hand, a massive, round pierce mark is seen, and similar enormous puncture wounds can be observed in the feet. It is assumed that the man's bearded face is swelled and malformed from many violent beatings. Bloodstains appear to be everywhere, particularly in the vicinity of the face and both arms. Despite all scientific investigations, the origin of the image in the shroud remains a mystery that can only be explained by a miracle, according to Christians. It has been found the images are not painted on, but are imbued inside the linen, and various attempts have been made to recreate the images and to reproduce the remarkable penetration of the color into the fabric, but have all fell short. This is the question of questions, according to physicist Paolo Di Lazzaro, a major authority on the shroud phenomenon. How was the image created? In an attempt to duplicate the images on the shroud, Di Lazzaro and colleagues utilized cutting-edge lasers to focus brief, powerful bursts of ultraviolet light onto raw linen. Ultimately, they were unable to replicate the features of the shroud or even a whole human form. The Shroud of Turin is unreplicable by science, regardless of how old the cloth is. How could this relic have been made all those years ago? It is unlikely that science will fully solve the several puzzles the shroud poses. A leap of faith over issues without clear solutions is necessary, either the faith of doubters or the faith of believers, Di Lazzaro told National Geographic in 2015. In 2018, the Shroud of Turin was inspected once more. This time, forensic experts examined the purported blood stains on the shroud using a novel method. To determine whether the shroud is genuinely phony, organic chemist Luigi Galaschelli and John Moores, University's Matteo Borini made the decision to conduct an experiment. Bloodstains pattern analysis, BPA, is a forensic technique that was used to determine the arm and body position required to create the blood pattern found on the Shroud of Turin. A willing subject was selected for the investigation. The individual, who was spread out on a cloth in different positions, had both synthetic and human blood applied to them. Next, the experiment's blood splatter patterns were contrasted with the picture on the shroud. According to findings that were written out in the Journal of Forensic Science, the Shroud of Turin is most likely a fake. According to them, the BPA occurred when someone assumed many positions and some of the blood on the fabric dropped off of a person who was standing above the shroud. The notion that Jesus was laid to rest in the cloth is refuted by this material. The following is how they explain the various positions required to meet the BPA seen on the shroud. The two short rivulets on the back of the left hand of the shroud are only consistent with a standing subject with arms at a ca 45 degrees angle. This angle is different from that necessary for the forearm stains, which require nearly vertical arms for a standing subject. The BPA of blood visible on the frontal side of the chest, the lance wound, shows that the shroud represents the bleeding in a realistic manner for a standing position, while the stains at the back, of a supposed post-mortem bleeding from the same wound for a supine corpse, are totally unrealistic. Simulation of bleeding from the nail wounds contacting wood surfaces yielded unclear results.